everyone here. Today's debate will be about EU funding and the Central and Eastern European countries. The motion will be, this House proposes to stop EU funding to Central and Eastern European member states. So as you see, the proposition will argue for this motion and the opposition will debate against this motion. And now, Alexandra, could you please talk something about a bit about the topic?
Thank you. So basically, everybody knows that the European Union pays certain funding for the member states, and this funding plays a crucial role in the development of the countries, especially for the Central and Eastern Europe. Currently, there are two waves of the European budget which member states receive. First, every 7 years, each member states receive funding in the form of multi-annual financial framework, or MFF, which is intended to help implement policies that strengthen the European goals. And to receive this money, each national government have to prepare a partnership agreement, which is actually a legal binding document defining the conditions and the way of using European funds for the concerned financial period. It is actual topic now because current partnership agreement for the member states and for the next period of 2021 and 2027 is under negotiation. The next sort of European support for the member states is the Recovery and Resilience Fund, which is an extra help announced last year by the European Union, dedicated to allocate for the member states in order to succeed for the European Green Deal. As you might have known that new targets for 2020 that Europe has to become first climate neutral continent. And also another goal of this Recovery and Resilience Facility is to faster recover from the coronavirus pandemic. So basically, European Union plans to allocate around 600 billion euros in loans and grants to support reforms and investments. And to get this money, also member states have to present their plans to the European Commission for the assessment, which process is also undergoing now. But as you might have heard, that not always the way how this money is spent meets the European Union targets, especially in the CEE region. That is why we decided to discuss this topic today, if the European Union should continue to pay and allocate money to the member states in the CEE region, or it is better to stop it. So let me give a pleasure to introduce our speakers. First, the side of proposition, our expert András from the Clean Air Action Group, geophysicist, present and one of the founders of National Federation of Hungarian NGOs Clean Air Action Group, or Levegő Munkacsoport, active fighter for environmental protection with over 30 years of experience, author or co-author of more than 60 studies and several hundred articles on economic instruments for environmental protection, green budget, energy and environment. And in 2017 received a Fundamental Award of the Hungarian Commission for Fundamental Rights. András, please wave somehow. Debater from the proposition side, Letizia Ristori, member and coordinator of Debating Society, University of Vienna. She is a competitive debater since 2019 of the Debating Society of Vienna, attended, among others, public debates hosted by the Budapest Debate Union and Central European University, was involved in the organization of summer boot camps to promote debating workshops and international mobility. From the side of opposition, today we have Peter Hale, who is currently working as a public policy advisor in the European Union. However, today on our debate, he's not sharing he's not representing European Parliament, but we're welcoming him today as an expert. He is an experienced policy expert of the European Union's development funds, including both EU cohesion policy and pre-accession instruments. He has 15 years of experience as a civil servant, including as Vice President of National Development Office, in charge of EU funds for Hungary. And he was a private consultant to the EU and International Organization of EU Funds Management and EU accessions. Currently, as I said, he works in the European Parliament for the delegation of Democratic Coalition of Hungary. Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
And as debater from the opposition side, Mate Ruben Yeginbaryan, philosophy, politics, and economics students of the University College of London, with 4 years of successful debating experience, member of the debate club in CEU, member of University College London's debate club and Corvinus Debate Society. Apart from participating in a lot of competition, he also had an experience of teaching debating for the high school students. Ruben, you are also welcome. Now I switch backward to you, Yuri, so you can represent the debate rules and.
Okay, thank you. So first, I'd like to inform everyone that this meeting and this debate is recorded. And this means that you are being recorded, but this means that you can also watch this on Facebook Live and also watch later on Facebook. Okay, so now let's go to the flowchart. Now let's see how the debate will go. Okay, so the two sides will debate one after another. Each speech will be 10 minutes. And after the 4 10-minute speech, both sides will have a 3-minute whip speech when they can summarize the debate and why they think that they won. Before the whole debate and after the whole debate, there will be a voting by our audience, and we will see who won this debate by the results of these votes. At the end of each speaker's time, they will hear a bell, and the audience will also hear this bell. I'll play it now. This means that their time only has 1 minute left. So they have only 1 minute left to speak. And yes, you can write after every speech, the debater or the expert will be asked questions, your questions, the audience's questions, and you can write your questions in the chat box here in Zoom or also in the comments on Facebook Live, under the Facebook Live. Okay, I think I've told everything. Alexandra, anything to add?
No, we can start.
Okay,
basically, let's proceed then with the first voting.
Yes.
So now, dear participants, you would have a chance to vote on the side which you support. So what do you think? Is it a good idea to stop financial support from the European Union of the countries of the Central and Eastern Europe? Or you think that European funds are essential for the development of this region, and you would vote for the side that we need to continue getting their financial support? Please, Judith, put a voting on the screen.
Great. And also under the Facebook Live, you can vote in comments. So write that which side are you supporting.
As I might remind, proposition side votes that we want to stop European funding, and opposition side tries to prove that no, we need to keep getting money from the European Union. Okay, I think this time was enough to vote for everybody, so we can proceed to the debate itself. Thank you very much.
Okay, then I'll ask the first speaker of proposition side to deliver his or her speech.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to tell you why the European Union should not continue funding to Central and Eastern European governments. I think that the EU funding has had a very bad effect, a detrimental effect on the economy of these countries. So what is necessary for a prospering economy? First of all, it is healthy and educated people. And what is necessary for health is, and also for partly for the good education, is a good environment, a healthy environment. Now, let's see first, how did the EU funding affect influence the environment in these countries? I will tell you some examples from Hungary, but these are generally valid also for the other CE countries. What is really valid not only for the CE countries, but also for Western European countries is agricultural subsidies. These subsidies are area-based, which means that the people who own land are incentivized, they are stimulated. It's in their interest to use as much land for agriculture as possible, so they do not, and the environmental requirements are very, very weak, so they really destroy the environment, and more natural places disappear. Just to tell you one characteristic figure, what characterizes very well the situation of the of biodiversity and the natural environment is the number of birds. The BirdLife Hungary started to count birds in 1999, and from 1999 until 2005, the number of birds did not change in Hungary. And after 2005, when these big agricultural subsidies began from the EU, the number of birds constantly decreased, and by now they decreased by 37% in comparison with the year 2005. Another example is energy efficiency. A lot of money has been spent on big constructions like roads and buildings and so on. Very often these are very much underused, or these constructions were inefficient. But at the same time, this drained away not only money, but also the specialists from energy efficiency improvements of residential buildings. And the situation is really tragic. According to the Eurostat, about 20% of the Hungarian households cannot heat their homes sufficiently during the winter, and cannot keep their home, 26% cannot keep their homes, their home sufficiently cool during the summer. And this is really a question of life and death, because during summer heat waves, the number of deaths increases substantially. Or another example is the situation of the authorities, the environmental authorities, the health authorities. These authorities presented often an obstacle to some big investments, which were riddled with corruption, and also because the government it is the intention of the government to spend EU money as quickly as possible. Therefore, these authorities were thought to be just hindering all this. And so these authorities have been substantially weakened, their financing reduced, their staff reduced, a lot of experts left these authorities, for example, the environmental authorities. And why is, just one example, why what result this had. one of the biggest problems in Hungary is air pollution, environmental problems. And each year, according to the European Environmental Agency, about 13,000 people in Hungary die prematurely because of air pollution. And these people, on average, lose 12 years of their life. And one of the main reasons of this air pollution is the fact that the burning of plastic and other waste in households is very, very widespread. And it is the environmental authorities which should control and sanction such illegal activities, but they don't have capacity at all to do this. Now let's look at the economy from another aspect. Much of the EU money is being distributed to the participants of the business in a way that individual companies receive money by applying to the government, to state organs. And this completely distorts the market, makes businesses unpredictable, because if one, just to tell you one example, not from Hungary, a colleague from Cyprus told me that in his town, a new hotel was built with EU money. And the two, when this was finished and started to function, the two existing hotels, which until that time operated quite well, went bankrupt, because of course they could not compete with a hotel which lived from state money and could keep its prices low, and then their services better. And also, if there is state money, then every business will try to get more and more state money. So they will concentrate on this, on getting public money, and not on improving their services and their products. And also, this is very detrimental for democracy, because many these businesses in general, and business groups will not criticize the government, and they will not support any, for example, NGOs which are critical of the government, because they fear of not getting public money for their companies. And another big problem is with EU money, that the national government, there is also the national government money, which often spent in a way which contradicts the targets, the aims of the European Union and the EU funding. Just to tell you one example, EU has provided money for higher education, for building new infrastructure and so on. But at the same time, the Hungarian government cut funding for higher education, and this reduction in funding was much bigger than the money which EU provided for higher education. So, you know, on one side, the EU is doing something and the national government is doing the opposite. So the national government is making a farce of EU funding. And there is also another big problem, that all this money, which is used for big investments, these need also own contribution, and there is a necessity of maintenance. And well, there is often not enough money for maintenance and operation, but all this money drains away money from those sectors which are really the most important for the economy. This is education, health, and so on. So so this is extremely such funding is really, you can see that, for example, in Hungary, there was very little money, or much less money than could be provided for the economy, for the health and education sector and environmental protection and so on. Another big issue is the democracy and public participation. You know, if the government wants to spend all this money quickly and without any problems, that of course it limits public participation. For example, in Hungary, there are a lot of so-called priority investments. Now practically everything is priority investments, which means that the public participation in this preparation and the implementation in these investments is extremely limited. And another problem is that, okay, so I've finished, yes? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and now all the audience, so all the people in the audience can give questions in the Q&A or in the chat box, and we'll read it to András. Okay, so we have a question. Can the EU, from Juliet Mylard, can the EU give money directly to the particulars to fund some private projects, for example, or must it pass through the national state each time?
Yes, it is possible to give, but it is only to a very, very limited extent. So it's most of the money, or almost all, very, very little part of the money is given directly. In some cases, it is possible, but it is just a small part.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Haidu Zoltan, or Zoltan Haidu. What about a better control of the EU money?
Well, that is, yes, it would be good, but how to control it? It is well, first of all, it is OLAF, which is meant to control. This is the anti-fraud office of the European Commission, which should control the use of EU money. But what happens? First of all, OLAF has very little capacity. It can control only about 0.1% of the projects. But let's say that it finds something that it has to pass on to the national authority, and you know that's generally in Hungary that's the end of it. Or it can pass it on to the European Commission and ask the Commission to ask the national government to pay back this money. But then what happens? The national government pays back this money, and it again receives this money for the other projects. Let's say if the money is stolen, then the criminals are happy, the state is happy because it didn't lose anything, only the society is suffers. And one more thing, OLAF can deal only with individual projects. It cannot deal with the whole system. If the whole system is corrupt, then OLAF cannot do anything.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have a last question. Would it be better if the EU would give this money to the people as basic income instead of giving it to governments and companies?
It would be much, much better, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And now I would like to ask the first speaker of opposition to deliver his speech. Thank you very much.
Your microphone.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
Yeah, okay, and the clock starts
Great.
now, I hope. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I have to confess that I am in a little bit of a difficult situation here because I am one of the people who have designed the implementation system of regional policy back in Hungary. And I believe that the system of regional policy, the way it should function in the European Union, is definitely a good one. And I am going to give you in the next couple of minutes an overview of why this policy is absolutely crucial and why it has to continue. On the other hand, I know some of the problems that András has listed, and obviously we could have a whole conference about to what extent these examples actually apply. and to what extent these examples represent what cohesion policy really is. I won't have the time to do that, but maybe in the debating section. We have gathered practically 5 main arguments why cohesion policy would, or the EU transfers, regional policy, agricultural subsidies, you name it, should continue. I'm going to discuss 3, and then Mate is going to give you the remaining 2. First of all, my first argument would be that the European Union, as we know it, cannot function simply without that sort of financial transfers and without that regional policy. Secondly, that these financial transfers are absolutely essential to the development of the Central and Eastern European countries, and we wouldn't have seen anything like the development that has actually taken place in the last 15 years if we had not had these supports. Third thing, if you look at the current situation of the economy, the coronavirus crisis, and the forthcoming transition, hopefully, to a climate neutral and sustainable economy, it also requires huge investments, and we wouldn't be able to do that here in Central and Eastern Europe without having the EU on our sides. The 2 arguments that I'm leaving to Mate are, but I think for the whole picture it's better to also just mention them here, is that first of all, the regional policy of the European Union, the whole regulatory framework that comes with the money, has played a very big part in actually making the regional development policies of the Central and Eastern European countries much better. So even though there might be examples which show waste of money, we would be much worse off if we did not have this sort of framework. And this also applies to the general quality of governance. There is much to be desired, much to criticize about the quality of governance in most of the Central and Eastern European countries, especially in Hungary. But again, I think we would be even in a worse situation if we did not have the EU financial transfers and the EU rules. So just on the 3 points that I have listed, the EU is not an economic community. It's a peace project. It is there to guarantee peace on the European continent, and it has been very successful in doing that over the last 70 years. And because it is a peace project, solidarity, help from the rich to the poor, is absolutely part of the game. Secondly, it is of course an open market, and an open market means that if you are part of a weaker national economy, if you operate with less capital from a weaker region, then you really have problems to compete on a single market. And from weaker regions, people will just flee. They will go in big numbers to the richer parts, which destroys the social fabric of the poor regions, and it also creates very big problems in the receiving regions. Of course, this still happens despite the fact that we have regional policy, but again, we would be much worse if we did not have the EU transfers. To give you some examples, and this is the second argument already, why the Central and Eastern European countries need those funds. If we did not have the EU funds, then in the period 2007 to 2015, Hungary's economy would have actually contracted 2%. Instead, it has grown 5%. The level of investments undertaken in the economy would have been 1/3 lower. We would have had 200,000 jobs less in Hungary alone if we did not have the European funds. And also, if you look at private consumption of the private households, then it would have been 11% less than actually it was. We had a growth of 5% of private consumption over this period. If we did not have EU funds, then we would have actually lost 11% of private consumption. The EU financial transfers to the present day are making up more than half of all public investments in the CEC region. And that includes everything from road infrastructure, from trains to the metro lines in Budapest, or the tram lines, hospitals, schools, public institutions of all kinds, the renovation of our inner cities, a lot of capital, yes, to small and medium-sized enterprises, which, by the way, are not just a gift to them. They are usually loans which you have to repay. But again, that's a long, long discussion. What I want to tell you is that we had 150,000 projects at least since accession to today that would not have taken place if the EU has not given us all this money. And the positive development figures that Hungary has produced, they are actually even, I mean, not even as good as the development figures of some of the other Central and Eastern European countries. If you compare the performance of the Central European countries with Southern Europe, who have actually seen a reduction in their EU transfers over the last decade, then you will see that the CECs have performed better. And I'm convinced that that is, to a large extent, also thanks to the EU funds. Final point about the coronavirus crisis. There is a consensus now all over Europe that in this particular situation where we are now, and we have had a recession that is already worse than the 2008 financial crisis, in this particular situation, balancing the budgets and the usual liberal recipes for restoring balance and having growth again and job creation again are not sufficient. We need a massive investment of public funds into new technologies, into environmental sustainability, into education, into vocational training. And we have seen over the last 1 year that the rich countries like Germany and Austria, they could go to their enterprises and say, we have all the money in the world. Don't worry, we can pay and keep the jobs. We can pay your employees. Don't worry. Eastern European countries have not been able to say that. We have much, much less space in our budgets. Again, what will help us is the 750 billion euros of the European budget over the next 5 years, which are in the Recovery and Resilience Facility, plus about 1.1 billion euros, out of which 350 each are spent through the cohesion policy and agricultural policy. I repeat, if we did not have that money, we would suffer much more. There would be much more poverty, much less jobs, much slower economic recovery. And on this scale, we would actually quite sure to have massive social consequences as well. This is more or less what I wanted to say. I think I can let the remaining time go. Thank you.
Yes, of course you can. Thank you very much for the speech. And now you can also ask questions from Peter. So also in the chat box or in the Q&A field. Okay, as I see, no one wants to ask a question. You are convincing, Peter, as I can see. And I would like to also add that the debaters and the experts, so the speakers can also ask from each other. And then you can answer others' question in your speech. Okay, so if there's no question, then I would like to ask the second speaker of proposition to deliver her speech.
Thank you very much. First of all, I will start with some rebuttals. There was a question, should I stop?
Wait, I can't see the question. Okay, there's one question to the Q&A, so I will ask that if it's not a problem, Letizia. Okay, so Peter, the financial transfer with the goal to increase the GDP will not destroy the diversity and local specificity.
I can't actually see the question. Can you please repeat it?
Yes, the financial transfer with the goal to increase the GDP will not destroy the diversity and local specificity. I think that's not a question like in point of information, but you can add something to that if you'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest amount of funds that Central and Eastern Europe receives comes through what we know as regional policy. And at least in the Western European countries, this policy is also regional to the extent that the management of funds is directly in the hands of regional authorities and not the national authorities. Between 2007 and 2014, we had a similar system in Hungary. Now it's different, but still the EU requires all beneficiary countries to actually talk in detail to all the regions and to the local authorities when they make up their plans. It is very much a basic requirement for all regional policy all over Europe that you have to do economic planning that takes into account regional specificities, that your measures that you are financing, the projects that are financing, that they are based on local requirements, and also that you do a consultation with the regional authorities. Now, András has given us examples where it doesn't quite work out sometimes that way, but I can tell you that overall, in the vast majority of cases, the projects and the programs that we are financing in the regional policy are very much responding to regional needs. So therefore, they rather help these regional specificities develop. They help every region to build on the particular strengths that they have to answer the particular needs that they also have.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, we have another point of information. With increased economic growth, the corruption and damage would also be increased. Yeah, okay, so with increased economic growth, the corruption and environmental damage would also be increased.
Is this a question to me, or?
Yes, it's a point of information, so you can react to it if you'd like to.
I don't think that there is a direct link between growth or EU funds and the level of corruption. I don't know where the question actually comes from. If you live in Hungary, then this is what I'm saying is a difficult proposition to uphold. But let me just say that the case of Hungary, as we see it now, is really an extreme case. The level of corruption or the level of financial corrections, rather, in the investigations of Olaf, who have already been mentioned today, the Financial Control Authority of the European Union is about 10 times higher than on EU average. So I would definitely not think that what the situation that we have now is a result of a regional policy as it is. It has other roots, other causes in Hungary, which of course have to be addressed. But I mean, turning the tap off, yeah, that's a completely different discussion. And if we would go into that, maybe we had to reshuffle the camps a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, I muted. So the last point of information from Hale Zoltán. In theory, yes, but in some countries, it is a single ROP.
Again, a question too?
To you. So these questions are all for you.
The ROP, I think, is a regional operational program, yeah?
Yes, probably.
Yeah. Again, between 2007 and 2014, we had 7 regional operational programs because we had 7 regions. And I would have wished this practice to continue. Instead, we have now 1 territorial operational program, and we had the same between 2014 and 2020. To be honest, the number of operational programs that you have, whether you have a separate program for a region, doesn't in itself decide the level of delegation or the level of distributing competencies between the regional authorities and the national authorities. I do agree that we would need much more autonomy at the regional level, but again, regional policy, if anything, is a tool that would support decentralization and not the opposite of it. So again, stopping regional funding to Central and Eastern Europe wouldn't really change this problem, which I agree very much exists in Hungary.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And now, Letizia, again, I would like to ask you to deliver your speech.
Okay, well, I will start. First of all, good evening to everyone, ladies and gentlemen, judges and the fellow debaters from the opposition. And I think I will start with a couple of rebuttals. And my first point would be that Peter actually mentioned that the European Union cannot function without these funds. Well, the point is that these funds and the way they're distributed are actually prompting Euroscepticism. And we strongly believe that until we suspend it and the necessary measures are taken, with the possibility of renewal of funding that is based on strict conditionalities, we will actually manage to strengthen the European Union and to make it easier for the European Union to survive this crisis. So it would actually have good effects for this stakeholder involved as the European Union. Second, development. Well, development, the problem with development is that it is the development of a business and market situation that is completely distorted. So the businesses or the situations that are actually evolving and have been somehow have benefited from these fundings are not surviving under real market conditions. And the second point of the development problem is that the damages that these policies might cause on a long-term run is actually perhaps greater than the benefit that they have caused, because some governments like in the Czech Republic are actually actively struggling and are having a debate right now on whether it is actually possible or will be possible for them to keep up financially with their state finances, with the projects that they have initiated, if these finances from the EU budgets are steered and redirected towards other states or towards other projects that are not in the Czech Republic. My third point, and then I will start with my speech, would be that we are not really saying that the EU funds are only causing harm and have not caused any good. We're saying that if we balance the good with the harm outbalances and outweighs the good, because the fact is that we're dealing with a system of funds that is prompting corruption, is causing a distortion of the market, and also the dismantling of democracy. So, and this is true insofar as I said, they severely undermine fair competition, competitivity itself, and a proper allocation of goods on the market. And they also farden, as my colleague András already touched upon, an already existing cleavage between companies that are independent from the state parties and oligarch companies. And in light of these oligarch companies kind of tend to team up with the state party, and also favoring, again, corruption and dissolution of democratic institutions. And let me repeat that, this is precisely our point. The purpose of EU funding is to contribute to achieving the economic, social, and environmental goals. And yet, as long as the redistribution of these European funds is not regulated properly, it will cause more harm than good in the recipient states. So this system of distribution needs to be radically changed, or else it would just backlash on the people and democracies of the recipient states. And just let me show you this with some examples, again, because this is not like merely our arbitrary opinion. There is a staggering amount of polls and studies that show that the opinion as to the necessity to halt these EU fundings is actually kind of vastly represented in a large amount of net recipient countries, such as Slovakia, Hungary, or the Czech Republic. And actually, in a survey that was conducted in the Czech Republic, 61% of those polled actually replied that the rich EU countries should not finance poorer ones. And even in Slovakia, which is one of the less developed EU member states, 35% think so. And that is because the harm caused by said free money flowing from the EU causes more harm than good. And allow me to delve deeper into these arguments that were touched upon by my fellow debaters to show you why this is true. So there are 3 main reasons why this harm is actually being brought about. First one is that the granting of EU funds is not really bound to the presence of robust and legal institutions in those countries where the money flows. So this means that Hungary, for example, so this means that in countries where the line between state and party rule gets thinner and thinner, corruption and one-sided funds distributions are not just welcome, they thrive and flourish upon this money. The second point would be that the European Commission and OLAF, so as my colleague said in the answer to the POI, the European Anti-Fraud Office, who actually should monitor the distribution of money, have a very limited legal framework and capacity to actually fulfill their commitment and do their job. And OLAF does not really have much influence on this project either, because as my colleague already said, the project that investigates on and actually finds something about, which is, by the way, 0.1% Europe-wide of the projects that are being implemented, it can either be submitted to the national authorities, the very ones that are tangled up in this whole bundle of corruption, where nothing really happens in that case, or they can be submitted to the European Commission, which again will ask for the refund of the money. But the problem is that at the point, the national government might give them back the money, but still has the possibility to use the rest of the money. And this is the same government that actually implemented corrupted policies. Even if this phenomenon did not exist, the way EU funds are being distributed would still be making a mess out of these CEE's economies, and would contribute to the dismantling of democracy. So we have a picture that is painted essentially. So we have a failure to set criteria for a fair distribution, lack of monitoring on corruption, and free money flowing in. And especially if you consider the amount of money that has been mentioned at the beginning, so 600 billion euros on the long run, that is quite a lot. And I think this situation is not really safe for to give so much money to these countries that are under these conditions. And as my fellow debater András already pointed out, there is a severe market distortion paired with a waste of resources and the strengthening of oligarchies that are just a few of the major harms that this system of EU funds is causing. And I think there are no better words to explain this than those of an NGO representative from Bulgaria. Because what he said, quote, is you can see that companies in Bulgaria, including small and medium-sized enterprises, are entirely focused on the available EU funding. And sometimes they work on projects only because of the fact that they are founded by the EU and not because there is a real market need for them. So there we have it. And it's not the market or the quality of the products or the services offered that decide which companies make a profit and increase their capital. It is both the artificial life that is given by the EU fundings to companies that otherwise would not survive the competition, or probably would not survive because they're not operating under real market conditions, they're not operating to be more competitive, they're just operating to stick to the criteria that is set by the EU funds, or just direct connections with the ruling party. And this brings about cases where not only the free money flows into non-competitive projects, as I said, but it is spent on initiatives that are not financially sustainable, as I said before, for the net recipient states, or that are simply abandoned and left off after a while. The investments are therefore implemented, but after that, nobody really uses it. And one example is these fish processing factories that will build at Lake Tapsi in Estonia with this EU money. And these seed factories, fish processing factories, are actually empty. So on paper, it looked really, really good, but in reality, they never really started to work. And the very same person actually witnessed that there's tons of EU money that was spent on roads that were built are actually not used, with cars, like a maximum amount of 10 cars per day passing on those streets. And but let us not forget that the poisoning of these market mechanisms due to the system of distribution of this free EU money goes hand in hand with the destruction also of the intangible capital, such as human and health and educational capital, for example, thereby inflicting like deep wounds to these countries in the CEE area. And in order to explain this, it would just have to be realistic. Free money just attracts all those that are trying to get rich or much richer in a short time by illegal or semi-legal means, especially given the lack of control that András and I have mentioned before from Olaf, or regulating criteria. And more in general, as many studies show, in many countries all over the world, the availability of free money is an enormous driving force for elite businesses groups to fight for that money, no matter what the cost is for society, who is supposed to actually benefit from that very same money. In Slovakia, for example, an ad hoc delegation of the European Parliament was confronted with the following affirmations that were made by representatives of the civil society. And I quote, EU funds have always been seen as a gift or as a package of money which goes to oligarchs, and some groups are organized to live on EU funds. And they know how to get that money before even the calls for tender are being made, end of the quote. Since this money is not really being invested in public services or to enhance the competitivity of companies on an international and national level, it is not generating any sort of revenue nor social good whatsoever. Although that is actually the very purpose of EU funds. And as a matter of fact, since the money is being spent into social debt and streets, the resources that are left to prompt education, which in turn enhance, or in educational health or environmental issues, which in turn, again, enhance the quality of that very labor force or the quality of life that make up intangible capital, are drained. And so you have phenomena like that of brain drain. So let me finish with this sentence, which is that CE countries are just left drained and puzzled. They're uncompetitive and isolated, and with oligarchs getting stronger, but their democracy is actually getting weaker. So if the EU wants to seriously help the struggling CE countries and not to harm them, the funding needs to stop and the system needs to change. And as of now, if everything stays just the same, we will witness what we are witnessing right now, which is the withering of promising political and economic systems. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we are proud to propose the motion.
Thank you very much. You got one comment while you were speaking, and one question so far. So first the comments from Tamás Hale. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, curb corruption and enjoy EU fund for the benefits of nations.
Well, I completely agree with you that we should enjoy the EU funds for the benefit of the nations. The problem is the more this money flows into parts of the state that are corrupted, the more you will not fight corruption, you will actually prompt it. So if we actually just accept the funds and say, well, we can fight the corruptions while these funds are actually prompting corruption, it is just a situation where this cannot happen.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. Maybe EU should just pay Olaf more.
But I don't think it's just the paying, it's also the legal framework that is weak, and that the legal framework that Olaf is given is very, very weak. For example, as I mentioned, even if you actually were supposed to have a case of corruption, and you like either send it or submit it to the national government, that is the very problem of corruption. And or you just you know, kind of get the money back, but you leave that very corrupt national government other money. It's not really, it's not, I don't think that the just amount of money is the problem here, but of course Olaf should be kind of become more robust. That is something that we do believe.
Okay, thank you. Right now there are no other questions, but I will wait, for example, 10 seconds if anyone wants to ask anything from Letizia. Okay, as I see, there's no more questions, but if you have any questions, feel free to write them while the speaker is speaking, so there will be ready questions at the end of the speech. Okay, so thank you, Letizia. And now I'll ask the second speaker of the opposition side to deliver his speech. Ruben?
Yeah, am I able?
Okay, okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Then, yeah, okay, so cool. Okay, so first thank you for the floor. I'm going to respond to some of the points made by earlier speakers. So first for András tells us that EU funds are not good for the environment because the structure is that bigger territory is necessary, like it's territory-based thing. And then I don't think this is necessarily the case, because it's very often the case that because there is large territories where agricultural production is done, then there is economic factors such as economies of scale and other factors through which actually people can reduce the cost of making these goods, but also they can reduce the CO2 emission of a certain like agricultural land or an agricultural territory. Yeah. Secondly, he makes the example whereby there are very few birds since 2015. I think that's a very poor example, although I don't think that's indicative of anything really. Secondly, I think we hear many examples of at least these kind of like the example of the hotel in Bulgaria, where there were like 2 hotels and then a new one came with the EU money. And then I think, yeah, that it is the case that there are some examples like this, but I think in large, I think it's very important to see that this isn't what usually is the case, is that it is much more often that, much more usual that it is hard to apply for these funds. You really have to provide actually not much of the money is actually being corrupted, or very few of the projects are being corrupted in general. Now I'm going to return to these rebuttals, but first I really have to move on with my own points. So I have a few points prepared. First of all, I think it's very important to see how beneficial the structure of these projects are and how beneficial the idea of having these EU funds and EU projects in Hungary. So first of all, they promote social dialogue. That means is that before 2004 and then before the regime change in Hungary, there wasn't really, in Hungary, it wasn't really a tradition, or like not even in Hungary, but anywhere in the CE region, it wasn't a tradition to consult the relevant stakeholders. No one really talked to civil society groups. No one really talked to the relevant scientific groups in the region. But with these EU funds, if you want to do a project through the EU funds, you are required to consult the relevant stakeholder, and you are required to consult civil society there. So this actually means that there is increased knowledge to anyone who is making the project, then better projects are going to be built than if it had been without EU funding and without these practices. And then secondly, clearly this increases social dialogue, which is beneficial because it is a better structure to live in, and it's very important. Like social dialogue, I believe, has intrinsic benefits that need not to be explained. Secondly, I think it's also very important that the EU funds enable long-term policy planning. Is that these funds are 7-year plans, right? So the governments have to plan 7 years in advance to set their policy goals, set how they are going to spend their money, and then the execution. The small details may change in the projects, but the long-term goals of these projects cannot change. Therefore, even though there may be a change in the government in Hungary, which is in the CE region, it very often means that the new government going to have very different policy goals. The new government has to stick to these parts of the budget, these long-term parts of the budget. And this also means that there is at least a few fixed parts of the budget, and then many other parts of the budget are built on these EU funds. Therefore, the new government, if it comes to, but then cannot really change the long-term policy goal of the country that was set out before. Thirdly, it also, there is a very regulated execution of these policy of these funds, and this also means that there is knowledge is gathered by execution. So EU fund, how the regulation of EU funds is far more regulated than otherwise it had been in the CE region before the EU funds. So there is a higher requirement that you have to assess and reassess how your process is going, not only the success, but also as you are developing your project, you have to, as I said earlier, you have to consult with the relevant stakeholders. And through this, actually, as these companies assess and reassess how they are doing, they are able to gather very relevant information that is going to be useful for projects in the future. And also through them developing this practice of self-analysis, these companies who are executing these projects are going to see that, yeah, these practices are very useful and very relevant. Thirdly, it also increases through this project, there is also an increased transparency or an increased practice of transparency, whereby the EU projects require these projects require far more transparency than otherwise other projects would require. This means that when you are part of this, you have to show what kind of legal requirements you are abiding by, what kind of how much money you have spent, this and that things, and also so this is visible to people. Also, this is a case that we see this everywhere, these like billboards, right, where they say like, yeah, this was built by the European Union funds. So this actually shows that, yeah, what is the government is doing, what is the how is the government spending its money? How is the European Union is spending the money? The people can see a tangible benefits of the benefits of being an EU member, of the benefits of being of their government, and also they see that, yeah, this is because then they know that this was a public infrastructure project, right? It wasn't like a private building money on. Then maybe I don't like this, or I like this, and then there is also again an increased conversation can start from this. So this also means that, as I said, through the EU, through this project, there is an increased transparency and increased the social dialogue. Lastly, I think this directly clashes with one of the points with Letizia's point, is that I think these projects, if anything, really increase how much we believe the European Union is. So it really increases pro-European Union sentiment, because that we are seeing that, yeah, as this example is that there are the billboards which show that, yeah, this was built by the funding from the European Union. Then this really shows is that, yeah, the European Union is doing something well. We are prospering, we are getting new buildings in the country, and this really increases the pro-European sentiment. And this also kind of shows this higher level of integration of the CE region to the Western countries, which was a goal of this region since the regime changed in 1989. Yeah, so pro-European sentiment is also kind of like the fulfillment of this goal of that we are kind of part of the Western countries, or like having a close relationship with them. So in conclusion, what I have said so far is, I had these many points, is that the EU funds, by being part of these funds, the companies who are partaking and the government that is partaking, there is a better governance practices by transparency, self-awareness and self-analysis, and then higher social dialogue. So now I think there is something very important in kind of like somewhat concluding on this debate, is that in order for our side to win this debate, we need to show that the EU funds are good. They have a net positive effect. What we mean by having a net positive effect is that we have to show that they have a better macroeconomic development. That means higher GDP, or then that, increasing the size of the economic pie, better for the people. Then we have to show that this actually has a positive positive effect on development, and we have to show that it has a good positive effect on governance and a positive effect on the environment. I think Peter has very clearly showed with numbers that this is a very positive macroeconomic effect. I have shown that it has a very strong, very positive effect on governance. I think the 2 points we are kind of like debating does it have a better effect on development? This was the point made by the proposition side, and then whether it has a better impact on environment. So I think kind of like referring to the points made by the proposition, I think it's very important to see is that what's the contrary? Option A is that we are part of the EU funds, and option B, we are not part of the EU funds. With EU funds, being part of it, there is far more money that is going into the environment, going into better healthcare, going into better education. So if you look at this contrary, there is definitely better improvement, much more improvement on healthcare. And then lastly, about development program. Yeah, it may be true that some money is not good, but like in general, I think EU funds are, if I'm not mistaken, around, I can't find the date. Yeah, I think around 5-ish, 4 or 5% of the GDP. So it's not like a huge percentage of GDP, we assume. It's only like a relatively limited amount. So it is not that everything is like it's impacting the whole market economy of the country. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And there are a few questions for you. So the first, why are birds a poor example? Explain it, please.
Yeah, so what I wanted, I'm sorry. What I wanted to say is that I think it was a very little connection to the case. So like András said that, yeah, but then I think this indicator he chose didn't really connect. So had he said that because, I don't know, there is, like, I don't know, birds really don't like when we pollute, I don't know, like when we burn petroleum, and then therefore there is, so the thing is that it wasn't really connected to the whole case.
Okay, thank you.
And then also there is like many other external effects. I would bet that like the presence of birth has reduced in many other countries. So I don't think it's just the CE region since joining EU, right? So I think the link there. So he was saying that since 2005 there was like massive decrease in births. Doesn't really not a very strong indicator. Yeah. Second question.
Okay, great. In the preparation of the upcoming National Recovery and Resilience Plan, in some member states, public consultations were not even announced. Why is it not regulated?
That's I think is a good question. That's something that definitely should have been better regulated by the European Union. But still, I think in the contrary, at least now there is like, had we not had any EU funding and had it only been like the Hungarian government would have took some loan from, I don't know, some Chinese something or like some Russian something or like anywhere else, right? We need some financial budget for to tackle the coronavirus. So at least like either EU funds, there is some optionality or there is some idea for national social dialogue. Whereas in other cases, there is like literally like no idea, like not even the option of it. So I think like even though it's not perfectly executed, still it is much better. But yeah, I would agree that we need stronger regulation on this.
Okay, the next question. Is it written somewhere that the new government have to stick to the policy of the previous one?
Yeah. So these are like 7-year plans, right? We change government every 4 years. So it's always the case that there is like at least one government. Yeah. So you may not need to stick to the very small details, but like long-term plans, yeah, it is written down that you have to stick to this. So you cannot like, I guess, cut in half this project. So you have to stick to this. Yeah, it's written down.
If we speak about the EU finance projects, they increase the cost of the projects 2 or 3-fold. How is it fair?
Sorry, I couldn't get you.
Sorry, if we speak about EU finance projects, they increase the cost of the projects 2 or 3-fold. How is it fair?
So what the person is saying is that we have like a project and then with EU funds it costs like, I don't know, 300 million euros, whereas it would have only cost 100 million euros. That's the case. Because
I think it's that all projects the price of the projects are always increasing, and how is it fair for the EU funds, I guess? Okay, let's get to another question. Maybe the one who asked this.
Okay.
Or do you want to answer it like this, or maybe let's wait if the one who asked it maybe wants to clarify it?
To the best of my understanding, I think there could be an increased cost because there is like increased regulation, but I don't see why there is this 3-fold increase. So I'm not sure about this. I don't think this is the case. So yeah, this is absolutely not the case.
Okay. Okay. The one who asked price, the project actually cost 100 million, but they write that it costs 300 million just because EU funds.
Okay, so there is like two things in person. Is it so like if it's like we are talking about like straight up like bad corruption whereby like I don't know Mészáros Lőrinc is winning everything, right? So that's a different picture. I mean that's so if there is like no market competition and then we absolutely know that in this case I don't know Mészáros Lőrinc, right, is gonna win the tender, then that's a problem. But as I said, but the thing is that off of EU funds, around 2 or 3% in Hungary, which is the highest rate by far in the entire CE region, 2 or 3% of these EU funds are being used corruptly. So this is like still like, I'm not saying it's good, but this is still a big minority. Otherwise, in other projects, there is no corruption. There is a market, like there is competition between who gives the better option. So I wouldn't like in other cases, unless it's like very like strong corruption, there isn't this cost difference. Yeah.
Okay, one last question. why not give money as grants to companies who are ready to implement the projects and leave government just the regulatory role?
Yeah, so I think this was earlier asked to András too, right?
Yeah, sort of. So you don't want to answer it? Because it was answered before?
Yeah, I think so. So this is a... Yeah, I mean, like I personally, I think this is like somewhat like beyond the scope of the debate, in the sense it's like, this is like some big decision made by some like big EU heads, right? So I don't think, like, I think it can potentially work. I feel like I'm not qualified to answer this properly. I would say it can potentially work. I would assume there is also some other things that the EU has its reason why it makes it through the government. But I think, like, if I think Peter, my debating partner, would be much better to answer this question. So yeah.
Okay, that's all. Thank you very much. No more questions. Now I would like to ask the side of proposition to deliver their whip speech, which is only 3 minutes, and its goal is to summarize the debate and tell us why they think that they won this debate. We can't hear you, András.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So first, let me reply about the question about birds. Birds are a very important indicator of the healthiness of the biosphere, of the ecosystem. So, according to ecologists and biologists, if birds will disappear, humans will soon follow. So don't underestimate the role of birds. But yes, the question is whether Hungary would have developed better or not without EU funds. Well, this research, these models only considered how much did the EU funds contribute to the development of Hungary. But it is impossible to tell how much Hungary would have developed without EU funds. It is, there is, you know, if there would have been changes in the regulatory system, in the institutional system, if there would have been better, it's not possible. And one more very important issue. This is one of the most important arguments. This shows that these countries are very, very much dependent on EU funds. So without EU funds, they wouldn't be able to develop because they didn't make the necessary structural reforms. They were happy and with EU funds, and they became lazy. So it's this really is the most terrible, one of the most terrible effects of EU funds, that these countries are too reliant on EU funds. And this is not only I am saying this, like the institutions like the Hungarian DKI also wrote this in its official report in about EU funds. So if you have 1 minute. Sorry. Then concerning the climate, we wouldn't have be able to allocate as much money to climate. You know, it is not. It is a problem how much money we allocate to climate protection, but it's an even much bigger problem how much money the government allocates to climate destruction. Just to tell you one example, the EU in the recovery recovery facility would provide 1,200 billion forints for environmentally friendly transport. At the same time, according to the official figures of the government is subsidizing each year with 3,000 billion forints, environmentally harmful transport, road and transport and other transport. So if in 1 year they provide 3,000, and during the 6 or 7 years the EU provide for environmental good things, and for environmental bad things, and the EU provides a fraction of this, you will never reach the climate goals. So the Hungarian government would have a lot of possibilities to finance the climate protection, or at least eliminate environmentally and harmful subsidies.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I would like to ask the side of opposition to deliver their brief speech.
Thank you very much for all these fantastic arguments and about the questions as well. I mean, I absolutely love the one about birds, so I will try to come back to that again. What we wanted to show you, in fact, was that the economic effect of EU subsidies on the Central and Eastern European countries is overwhelmingly positive. And I have to, well, debate a little bit with András, because it is absolutely possible with methods of economic science to calculate what would have happened if we did not have the EU funds. It's called counterfactual analysis. And what the GKI Institute has done in the study that I mentioned was exactly that. This is how you should also answer the question about the birds. The question is whether the reduction in biodiversity was actually the result of the EU funds or not, or what would have happened without the EU funds. Now, there is a lot to criticize about the area-based payments in agriculture, but I'm afraid that's not really the main argument or the big problem behind what's happening with our biosphere. I would also like to react to something that Maria has said previously. If you ask citizens in Hungary about their support for our country's EU membership, then it is surprising how strong that support still is, despite the nature of the debates that we are having every day in politics. And if you ask people why they support Hungary's EU membership, then the positive effects of the economic support programs of cohesion policy are always among the top arguments. So I would definitely challenge the supposition that people would not support the EU transfers as we know them. You have given us a lot of negative examples, and I don't doubt that these negative examples exist. But I think the main argument that we have been trying to show you, and I hope that we were successful in that, was that overall the balance is positive. It is always more easy to bring a ridiculous, wasteful, bad projects on the front pages of newspapers, and it's much harder to explain the positive effects that are happening all over the place. And I think we should not let ourselves be distracted. Also in the private economy, there are studies, and these studies do not only show cronyism, namely that the influential people get the money. The subsidies that are given to companies, they are subject to a lot of conditions. If you don't comply with the conditions, you have to pay the money back, and most of the money is actually loans. So you are not that much shielded from the market. If you are not an enterprise that can survive, then actually you will get into trouble with or without the EU funding. So again, the last point, I do think that EU funds have especially done quite a lot for the environment. Most of the environmental infrastructure that has been built over the last 10, 15 years or 20 years, actually, it has been already paid by EU funds. So I think none of the problems that you have listed are caused or even worsened by EU funds, but the positive economic effects are definitely there. So let's continue and try to improve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now it is time for questions. So again, audience can ask questions in the chat box and in the Q&A section, but also all the panelists and speakers can ask questions for each other. The first question is for Peter. Maybe people support EU funds because they do not understand how it is spent.
What makes you ask that? Why would you suppose that?
It is not my question. I don't know. I'm just saying.
The question implies that the whole thing is bad, and people do not recognize that. Now, I would really challenge that assumption. There are lots of data, lots of research that actually support that cohesion policy, that EU transfers are doing a lot of good, not only in Central and Eastern European countries. This has been a policy that has been around in Europe for 45 years. The agricultural policy has been there since 1958, actually, from the first day of the EU as we know it. And it is still responsible for like 2/3 of the EU budget. If it was so bad, it would have been stopped decades ago, and it's not. It's actually increasing. So I don't think that the basic assumption behind the question actually holds true.
Okay. Right now, we don't have any questions from the audience. So
may I reply also to this?
Yes, of course.
Well, according to opinion, national representative opinion poll in Hungary, only 6% of those asked believe that EU money is used correctly without corruption. And another figure, a recent opinion poll, according to a recent opinion poll, only 38% of the Hungarian people think that corruption is unacceptable. So people got used to corruption, unfortunately. They are apathetic about it. They think that they cannot do anything about it. And although they know that EU money is generally used in a corrupt way.
If I can just say one sentence on this. The general level of corruption with EU funds overall in the European Union is like 0.5%. The levels in Hungary that we are seeing, they are absolutely not representative for the EU budget. They are not representative for the cohesion policy. They are a specific problem for Hungary. Even in Hungary, these problems have not been caused by the presence of EU funds. EU funds are an indicator of the situation. And the reason that we actually know so much is that the control system of EU funds is actually much, much stronger than for what applies to the rest of the budget. This is one of the reasons why you see negative examples as well.
May I?
Yes, last reaction, and then we are moving to the next question.
Yes, well, the situation is not better in Romania, in Bulgaria, in Slovakia, in the Czech Republic. Everywhere there's an enormous problem with EU funds. And according to a research by the Sociological Institute of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, these certain business circles have started to have close relations with the government, with politicians, when this much free money started to flow to Hungary. So yes, there is a very close connection between the flow of EU funds to Hungary and corruption. And also in the same is the situation in other countries. Think of Babiš, the Czech Prime Minister.
Okay, thank you. Here's the next question. Anyone can answer it. Environmental NGOs get support from the EU, but since the support from national government was almost totally cut, so since the support from the EU, why there are no regulations about that? And how can you say that it helps environment and sustainability? So anyone who wants to answer that?
Well, I feel like it relates to something that I have said. There are no EU rules that would determine directly how a government spends their money. However, there is a rule called additionality. And the additionality rule actually says that if you receive EU money in a particular sector, like for environment or health or whatever, then you have to show at the beginning, at the end, and at the end of the program that the national investments into that sector of the economy have not decreased. Now, this check is actually done, and I would really have to challenge the idea that the additionality principle doesn't work overall just because we have one or two examples that seem to be contrary. The NGO, the situation of the NGOs in some of the Central and Eastern European countries is definitely a cause for concern. It's way out of the scope of our current debate. But to just say one more thing to the question, actually, I don't think that taking away EU funding from NGOs would actually improve their financial situation. If a government is not willing to spend on them, they will not start spending just because the EU goes away.
Yes, with this, your last sentence, I completely agree. But the problem is that, well, first of all, there are a lot of rules concerning how the national governments should spend money, not only EU money, but their own money. And also, for example, rules about the transparency and so on, which are in the EU regulation. Secondly, there is the European semester with country-specific recommendation. Although this is not legally binding, but it is accepted also by the national government. So the recommendations for Hungary are accepted by the national government of Hungary. And, you know, and then what happens? Just the opposite happens. Or there is the partnership agreement. A lot of conditions are listed in the partnership agreement, but the national government doesn't implement it. Although it's a legally binding document, the partnership agreement on EU funds, but you know, it's written there. For example, in the Hungarian partnership agreement, there is a sentence: the Hungary will substantially reduce corruption or take measures against corruption. And what happened? Just the opposite happened during the last 10 years, and so on. I can tell you a lot of examples. So there are instruments of which the European Commission could use, but it doesn't use. And just one more thing, the European Commission could suspend funding if there are systemic problems with EU funding. It suspended it to Bulgaria, to Czech Republic. It suspended almost all funding to Hungary. I don't remember in which year. But it is possible. Why isn't it doing it? Okay, let's say that it is possible to improve the situation. Why doesn't the European Commission do? Why doesn't the European Commission do anything about that? Why just let this corruption go on? And may I add one more thing? There was a recent research by the Corruption Research Institute in Budapest, which showed that these big companies, which get most or very large part of the EU funding, are completely uncompetitive on the international market. Thank you.
Can I just maybe come in on this once more?
Yes, but shortly, because we have other questions and not so much time.
Actually, if you, I would have to agree with a number of things that you have said. They are also dear to my heart, and sometimes I really don't understand why the Commission doesn't enforce their mandate stronger than they do. On that we agree. Still, if you read the papers of yesterday in Hungary about the acceptance or the possible non-acceptance of the 5-year plan for the Recovery and Resilience Fund, there are news about the questions that are being debated. And the questions that are being debated are exactly to what extent the Hungarian government actually follows the country-specific recommendations, whether it does enough for corruption, and whether it has properly listened to the civil society organizations. The European Commission has actually flagged up those problems, and the Hungarian government will have to come up with an answer. I have seen cases where the answer was not very convincing and the data afterwards were even less convincing, but I wouldn't really go as far as to say that the whole system is bad and the EU Commission is not doing anything about it. Thanks.
Okay. Next question. If Hungary is so corrupt and everybody knows that, then why does EU allocate them one of the biggest financial share? Shouldn't EU first regulate that or make some extra checkup for these projects?
Well, that is our question also too. Why the European Commission and the European Union tolerates this? Yes, this is the question. They should not.
Yeah, well, the allocation rules, they are according to your level of prosperity and a couple of social indicators, like the level of unemployment, or I think what we have also is the level of education of the workforce and the relative share of young people who are neither in education nor in employment. So to put it very shortly, the indicators that are being used for the distribution of money, they are purely economical. The adherence to anti-corruption and environmental and other criteria, they are so-called preconditions. So before a single euro is transferred to any country, they at least have to come up with a legal framework that is supposedly fighting corruption. Secondly, they have to have plans on that. Now, the European Commission or the European Union, despite all the appearances and the news that we hear every day in the Hungarian official channels, is not an empire. They cannot come and hunt down a national government if they don't comply. But that doesn't mean that they silently accept over decades what's happening. There is a lot going on currently, a lot of debates in the European Parliament precisely about the thing that we are debating today, whether funding should be reduced or stopped. There have been cases, as András has mentioned, back in 2012. I really hope we can avoid actually having the money taken away, because the country absolutely needs it and is going to need it even more. But just one final point on this. None of the problems that you have listed are here because we have European funds. They are related to the general quality of governance in Hungary. They are related to the problems of spending public money all over the world, everywhere. And the system that we have in the EU supported programs is a lot stronger and a lot better than what the national systems would normally deliver.
May I add?
Yes.
Well, there are very strict regulations about the use of EU money, and there is the common provisions regulations, the financial regulation, and so on. But these are not 100% precise regulations. But anyway, it is a decision of the Commission how they interpret it. And if they really see that the practice in Hungary or in Romania or in Bulgaria completely contradicts these regulations, the provisions of these regulations, then they should stop funding. You know, you are right. There are discussions and debates already for many years in the European Parliament and so on, but nothing happens. You know, words are not enough. It's like telling to a criminal, we will not put you into prison, but please don't kill anybody, don't murder anybody next time. So it doesn't work.
Peter, anything to add, or maybe Ruben?
As I said, at the end of the day, what you have to look for is the aggregate data. And the aggregate, we are debating not Hungary, we are debating a policy. And we are debating a policy for Central and Eastern Europe. And I have to say that what you see in terms of corruption in Hungary is absolutely not typical. It's not happening like on this scale anywhere else in Europe. So while I would definitely wish, as I said, that the Commission was more strict on enforcing the rules. And I would also agree with you that we need to enforce those rules because this is taxpayers' money. We have to be very careful with it. And if we waste it, or if we allow it being stolen, then we are not going to have the positive effects that we are all waiting for. But again, there are individual examples. There are problems, there can be even big problems, but at the end of the day, what we have to look at is the aggregate picture, and that's positive, even in Hungary, not to mention all the other member states.
As far as corruption is concerned, according to Transparency International, Bulgaria and Romania are really not much better than Hungary. So we have the similar problems in practically all Central and Eastern Europe countries. The level of corruption is not the same, but I wouldn't say that Hungary is very, very special in this relation.
You don't have these problems in the Baltic countries. I think you have it much less, to a much smaller scale in Slovakia. I think you have it to a much smaller scale also in the Czech Republic, despite of this high profile conflict of interest case of the current prime minister. And if you would take away the EU funds, I don't think that the situation in our country or in Bulgaria or in Romania would improve that much. There is no time now to go into all the details of financial control rules that exist in EU programs, but I can tell you there was nothing like the rules that we have in cohesion policy before the cohesion policy actually came into force in Hungary. The way Hungarian budget money was spent was much, much less strictly controlled. And I could explain, we could go on a long time about why the systems still don't function the way they should. But again, speaking about the policy, speaking about the whole Central and Eastern European region, the overall picture has to be positive, despite of all these very real problems that you are mentioning.
Ruben, you wanted to say something, but you didn't get the chance. So is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I just quickly wanted to point to the, I kind of like basically kind of wanted the same thing that kind of Peter said. So yeah, nothing more to add. Thank you.
Okay, then let's move on to the last question, and then we will do the second vote. So how does the EU institutions, how can the EU institution influence and push national government to actually implement what is written in the partnership agreement? So I think this is connected to a previous question. Yes, András?
Well, practice proves when the money is suspended, or even there is a threat of the suspension of EU money, the national government acts. This was the case in the Czech Republic, in Bulgaria and Hungary. So if the money is, that's the only way, because, you know, talking only to the government, even going to the European Court of Justice doesn't really help much. We have seen that several times. The only effective measure is suspending EU money. And that's what the rule of law regulation is about, to suspend money.
I think we didn't want to discuss the rule of law regulation, but I do agree it touches at the very heart of the debate, and I think this is maybe also an argument that supports what I have been trying to say. The problem that exists with corruption in a number of Eastern European countries is that normally the assumption is that your national legal systems can deal with issues of corruption. And if they don't, then the problem that you are having is again much, much wider than EU development policy. Then it simply means that your prosecution, that your courts do not apply law. And if they don't apply part of the legal framework, namely the anti-corruption framework, it automatically means that they are not applying any other part of EU legislation. You cannot rely on them. That is why the rule of law instrument has come about. And I mean, it's still, I mean, we have the clear regulation on when and how it should work. We will see, I think around the end of this year, to what extent the Commission will apply that. What I can see from my personal experience is that the patience in Europe for the kind of problems that we are debating now is definitely running out. So even though if someone is not satisfied with the level of the answer that the EU has given to these very real problems, times might be about to change.
May I?
Yeah, okay, last direction, and then we are voting.
So first of all, yes, the regulations are quite good, but the practice is very often totally different. You know, if the regulations are not enforced, you know, the regulations then aren't worth much. This is one thing. And the other, even if there would be everything perfect in the regulations, giving money to companies in a way that state officials decide who gets money and who doesn't really is a very, very, has a very, very detrimental effect on the whole economy. This should not be done. This was done. We know this system already from the socialist era. We know what was the result of this system. No, companies should not receive free money. Thank you.
Okay, thank you as well. Thank you for all the speeches, and thank you for this really good debate. I think it was fantastic, and all the questions and all the reactions were really great. And now I'd like to ask the audience to vote again. And I'd like to ask Judith to show us the second vote.
Okay, I think that was enough time to vote. So let's see now which side won this debate. Judith, if you can perform the results of the first vote, we see what were the opinions in the beginning. Okay, so in the beginning of the debate, we see that most of the people voted, 57%, voted for the proposition side. Basically, which means that they would like to stop the EU funding for the countries of the Central, Eastern, and European, for the Central and Eastern Europe. Let's see now the results of the second voting. So after the second voting, the audience was convinced even more, 60% against 40%. For the position that the EU funding should be stopped for the CE region countries. So, team of the proposition, congratulations, you won this debate.
Absolutely. Well done. Congratulations.
May I?
Yes.
Yes, I think both of us won because it was a very interesting debate. So, and you know, there are a lot of truth in what Peter and Ruben said, but you know, we had to make this discussion. So, you know, I don't think also, I do not think that everything is bad in EU funding, but the system has to be changed. But, you know, in the interest of the debate, I took a very strong position.
I think promise that the area-based payments for the next period of the agricultural policy, just to get back to the very beginning, they are going to be smaller in relative size to the compared to the rural development payments as well, and that there will be much more environmental rules, bird protection rules. A lot of that is coming. We are in the middle of the debate for the cohesion policy and for the rest of the EU funds. The debate is more or less closed, but I'm convinced that we are going to do something about all the negative things that you have said. So congratulations, very well argued, and you have won. Thanks.
Thank you.
Congratulations indeed for every speaker and every debater and every expert as well. If you like this debate, then make sure that you check the Facebook page of ELTE Debate Club and Corvinus Debate Club, and also the Vienna Debate Society as well. and make sure that join us next semester to our debate events, because they are as good as this, and also we can talk about birds there as well. Okay, so I think thank you for everyone.
I would like to ask to receive some sort of feedback after this debate. You will receive an email. If you would like to still ask some questions of our debaters, get their contacts, or join the fight against the EU funds in the CE region, you are welcome to leave your comments after. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.